Colossians 3:16. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. We're going to stop there today. This is part of my series going through Colossians chapter 3, verse 8 to 16. And we've spent a bit of time exploring the phrase, let the word of Christ, but I want to move to dwell in you richly. Now, what that means is that there is no graduation from the priority of the word of Christ. There is no alternative to it. There is no let's move on to something else. That is what we start with. That's what we go on with. That's what we continue with. There is no end to the exploration of the riches of Christ. There has to be the focus on it, and there has to be a commitment to not be distracted by anyone. Remember, what Paul is saying there is, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. The first point is what that word is doing in you, not so much how you can judge the other person, not so much how you can point accusing finger at the other person, but what the word of Christ is doing in you. And in my mind, once we begin to see you putting off all those things that Paul said to put off, anger, malice, rage, abusive language from your mouth, and you put on what he said to put on, out of mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, and bearing with one another and forgiving one another, I believe that began to tell me that the word of Christ is dwelling in you richly. That is something that has taken you over, something that is in charge of your life. It's something you begin to reflect in the words that you speak, reflect in the way you live your life, reflect in the calmness of your demeanor, in my opinion. But you can see these two things are together, right? Having the word of Christ dwelling in you richly and how it's being expressed in your life. But there could be a form of disconnect. You could have a lot of emphasis on the right knowledge, which Paul said puffs off. You will begin to see that in a lack of love, being judgmental, a self-definition in which you are measuring yourself by how many Bible verses did you cram, which Bible school did you go, how many degrees do you have in theology. You measure yourself that way. Did you go to the right school? Do you have the right background? But in Christ, none of those things matter, right? But the new creation, none of those things matter in the ultimate scheme of things. Not as if all those things are like zero, but you can see an example in Paul, who had a lot of pedigree when it comes to his history, but they said all those things, I count them dung that I may gain Christ. Can you see the elevation of Christ in his mind, in his art, in his pursuit? Then you have humility, just as we have here. It's a put on humility. These are things that are subtle changes, right, in your life. People want to say to you that once you become a Christian, all your problems will go away and you're going to get that contract and the miracle. But we don't see that here. We don't see that as the indication of the word of Christ dwelling in you richly. And there is always more. That's one thing I want us to put in mind. There's always more things that can be done. It's not done. We're not finished. Paul was very clear in his writing to the Philippians. He said that this one thing I do, forgetting what is behind me, I stretch forward for what is ahead of me, so that I can lay hold of that for which Christ has laid hold of me, and be found in him, not having my own righteousness, but righteousness by faith in Jesus Christ, that by some means I might attain to the resurrection of the dead. that kind of single-minded focus on Christ, on the word of Christ, is the bare minimum. God bless you. See you later.